They are going along here. We're in 27th chapter of Genesis, looking at Isaac and Jacob and Esau. And we're going to read the first couple verses here before we get started this morning. Now it came about when Isaac was old and his eyes were too dim to see, that he called his older son Esau and said to him, my son, and he said, here I am. And Isaac said, behold, I am old, and I do not know the day of my death. Now then, please take your gear, your quiver, and your bow, and go out to the field and hunt game for me. And prepare a savory dish for me, such as I love, and bring it to me, that I may eat, so that my soul may bless you before I die. And Rebekah was listening when Isaac spoke to his son Esau. So when Esau went to the field to hunt for the game and bring home, Rebekah said to her son, behold, I have heard your father speak to your brother Esau, saying, bring me some game and prepare a savory dish for me, that I may eat and bless you in the presence of the Lord before my death. Now therefore, my son, listen to me as I command you. We're going to stop there for the reading at this time and ask the Lord a little blessing on our time together. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time to open your word. We ask and pray, Lord, to give us attentive hearts and attentive minds, and just to see what you have in store for us today as your children. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, so we've had a good, interesting couple weeks discussing about Isaac and getting his bride and God providing there. We also see that there was another issue in the family with being able to reproduce offspring, and then we see that being taken care of. And we understand that Jacob and Esau were twins, and that Esau came out first. We discussed about the significance of the oldest son and what the birthright is. The two sons were there. There's 3 pieces of inheritance, and Esau was able to have the birthright, which is an extra percentage of that, which would actually be an extra third. We saw the deception, or not really the deception, but the use of food to buy that birthright from Esau, from Jacob. And we see that there was little unpleasant feelings going on there between the brothers at that point in time, when Esau realized what he had done, selling his birthright for a bowl of soup. And last week we talked about the famine in the land. And now we're going to bounce back to the interpersonal relationship struggle inside the family, and see a little bit more here about what's going on. Now, we read the first 7 to 8 verses here this morning, and we saw that Isaac is at the point of his life where he's ready to give blessing to his oldest son. Now, we might see this as a little differently, but the blessing is not the birthright. That's like one of these things that's already decided upon in the birth order, okay? But the blessing is something extra. It's something special, where the father is going to, in some cases, they might not just give a blessing, but they might give a curse upon one of their children. But he's getting ready to bless Esau, and he says, go out into the field and get me some wild game. So he does that, but Rebekah, Isaac's wife, is listening. And we already talked about this a couple weeks ago, that these parents obviously had favorites. We also talked about how it's not good to have favorites as parents, even though there are certain times of emotional ties that we might have, bonds with one child or another, and we might have with our own parents, that just naturally happens. But you see this, and you see that she is hearing these words, and she wants everything that she can get for Jacob. She wants that blessing for Jacob. So they hatch this little scheme, or I shouldn't say they, she hatches this scheme, and Jacob follows along because she's very influential in his life. So we see the fact that Jacob called Esau in. He knows that his days are short. A lot of times the blessing would be given on your deathbed, but obviously Isaac knows that it's not long, and he doesn't want to wait to not give the blessing, because that's important. Okay, if you're failing and you can't give the blessing, you're missing that. So we see that he calls him in. He asks him to go out, take his bow and his quiver, and to get some game and to make him a nice meal. And when Rebecca hears this, she goes to Jacob and she says, we got to take care of this problem here, because he's going to get the blessing. You may have the birthright, but he's going to give the blessing to Esau. Right now, that doesn't mean a whole lot to us, but as we read down through here and we find out what the blessing is, it's going to mean something. It's going to mean something. And now, therefore, my son, listen to me. This is Rebecca talking to Jacob in verse 8. Listen to me as I command you, go to the flock and bring me 2 choice kids from there, that I may prepare them as a savory dish for your father, such as he loves. And then you shall bring it to your father, that he may eat, so that he may bless you before his death. And Jacob answered his mother Rebekah, behold, Esau my brother is a hairy man, and I am a smooth man. Now perhaps my father will feel me, and then I shall be a deceiver in his sight, and I shall bring upon myself a curse and not a blessing. But his mother said to him, your curse be on me, my son, only obey my voice, and go get them for me. So he went and got them, and brought them to his mother, and the mother made the savory food for the as his father loved. We're going to look at a couple things here real quick before we move on that are important to this part of the story. Number one, we had talked about this back a couple weeks ago when we introduced ourselves to Jacob and Esau. We mentioned that Esau was this furry little kid when he was born, and Jacob wasn't. Jacob was holding on to his heel, though, and that was part of his name. So there's obviously a distinction between these two brothers. There's a genetic difference, and it's very pronounced in his appearance and his feel and his touch. And when you're going to get a blessing from your father, the patriarch of the family, part of that would be holding your hand, touching your arms. A lot of times they would hold a hand and put their hand around the back of your neck. And we're going to see how this plays out later on. Now, in verse 12, we see the youth, or the child, he's not really youthful, but the son asking his mother, why do I want to do this? Because I may bring a curse upon me. You know, I'm smooth, he's hairy. That's not that far gone. He's going to understand that I'm not Esau. It's going to be pretty interesting. You know, if you ever had touching a furry thing, like we were dealing with Dusty yesterday, petting him down before we had to, do what we had to do. He was furry. There's definite difference between something that is hairy and something that's not. And it doesn't take much for you to realize the difference. So we see this, and he asks his mom, he says, I may bring a curse upon myself trying to do this. And she says something very interesting. She said, your curse be upon me, my son. Only obey my voice and go get them for me. Now, technically speaking, if a curse is given, you can't transfer that curse, as we're talking about here in biblical times. That is something from that is voiced and it's upon you. But what she is saying is, I will take the penalty for that curse. I'm assuming that penalty upon myself. So he goes and does this. And there's something else. It may seem kind of small in this story, but 2 times already we've seen the mention of a savory meal. So as somebody who enjoys to eat, I'm going to say a savory meal is very biblical, and it's a good thing for us. And I enjoy it, as you know. But we see this here, but there's a difference, because culturally speaking, now we know that Abraham started out with flocks of sheep and goats, and we talked last week about how his wealth grew 10-fold, 100-fold, and so they have a lot of animals. But if you have a lot of people that are working for you, and you have a lot of family, extended family, that are living in your tribal type atmosphere that you're in, it doesn't take long. If you're cutting a couple head out a day of animals to feed them, they can't reproduce as fast as you could eat them for your needs of food. So typically speaking, even though the Bedouins type atmosphere that they're living in here, you're going to have a hard time. You're going to have a very hard time to sustain that. So they would have a lot of bland, meatless meals throughout the time. So when you had something like Isaac is asking for him to go out and get some wild game for him. He wants something different. He wants a savory, tasty, something that is out of the norm of their mundane, monotonous type meal that they might have. Couple other things we look at here also. We understand that Jacob is a good cook, going back to the time when he was making that soup and purchased his brother's birthright with the bowl of lentils. That men and women would cook. It's not one of those things where just a woman would do the cooking. There are many cases where men were good cooks, so that's a great and wonderful thing to understand. So we understand these things. We're moving forward in the story, and Rebecca goes the extra mile. She is leaving nothing to chance for her son. She is leaving nothing to chance with her deception of her husband. She took the best garments that Esau, her elder son, which were with her in her house, and put them on Jacob, her son, and put the skins of the kids on his hands, on the smooth part of his neck. And she also gave savory food and bread, which she made to her son Jacob. So we see that this isn't just a little deception here. She's covering all the bases. She's got the clothes of Esau. She's got a meal that her husband enjoys, and she's making it. There's a difference. We have domesticated meat. Some of us that like to hunt and fish and like to have wild game, there is a definite difference between domesticated meat and things that grow up in the wild. I would argue the fact that the things that grow up in the wild anymore are much better for us, since they're eating off of God's earth and not full of antibiotics and all these other things. I'm not going to get on my soapbox, all right? They're not steroids and all kinds of things like that. We know that probably the animal of choice around here, if he was going out, would be venison. And we also understand that those animals eat really well. If you have any flowers or shrubs or little trees that they like to eat, you might as well forget about it, because they're eating good on your neighborhood. And so we understand there's a difference in taste. There's a difference in taste. But she made this taste so good that Isaac is not even going to see the difference. He's not going to notice the difference, because she's got the flavor popping out of here. She's like one of these celebrity chefs going on with her abilities to cook for her husband. She knows exactly what he likes. So it moves along. We see every aspect of this to the point where they're taking the skins of the animal and putting it on the back of his hands and the back of his arms and the back of his neck. Remember, I told you how they would hold their arms, and put their hand upon the back of their neck to give this blessing. I just keep thinking about this. Esau must have been really hairy. If you're going to feel like the skin of a goat, I mean, this guy must have really been covered, because there's a real difference there between a human being and the feel of a goat skin. And so this individual Rebecca is not leaving anything to chance. And she gives the food to Jacob, and now we see the interaction going on here. And Jacob said to his father, "I am Esau, your firstborn. I have done as you told me. Get up, please, sit and eat my game, that you may bless me." And Isaac said to his son, "How is it that you have it so quickly, my son?" And he said, "Because the Lord your God caused it to happen to me." So we see already the first real kind of underhanded thing in this interaction that is happening here. Jacob's lying to his dad, not just in the deception aspect of it, but he is lying and saying, I am Esau. I am Esau. And you see a little bit of hesitation on Isaac's behalf, okay? Because he's saying, how did you get this so fast? Now, if Esau was hunting deer here in Monroe County, it wouldn't take long. I almost had one on my way to church this morning, and Amy, I guess, knows this deer by name. Because she said, it doesn't matter if you blow your horn or blink your lights at him. He doesn't move. So, I think we have to get one of those brush guards on the front of our Explorer, we'd give him a nudge maybe. But it wouldn't take long to go out with your bow and get a nice piece of venison and bring it. But you have to remember, they're outside, they're in the wilderness. They're not the only people living around them. There's other civilizations. So it takes a while. Remember, back when Esau sold his birthright, he had been out for days to the point where he was hungered, he was near starvation, and Jacob sees that moment, says, hey, you like this? It smells good. I'll take your birthright if you want this bowl of lentils, right? So Isaac's like, I don't know, this is really quick. And you see Jacob's quick thinking here in a negative way, saying, oh, but the Lord your God has been good to me, basically, and blessed me with this. And we see what's going to take place here. Isaac said to his son, how is it that you have so quickly? And he said, because the Lord your God caused it to happen to me. And Isaac said to Jacob, please come close, that I may feel you, my son, whether you are really my son Esau or not. So Jacob came close to Isaac, his father, and felt him and said, the voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. So we understand what the trigger was for Isaac to be a little concerned. Now, I don't know about all of you, but I understand that as I'm getting older, my eyesight's getting a little worse. And I'm reminded that sometimes around my house that my hearing might be getting a little bad. That's what happens when you run a lot of machinery and use a lot of loud tools. You lose your hearing. And it's starting to go a little bit. So this gentleman's at the end of his life, and he's obviously experiencing the dimness of his eyes, which was mentioned previously, and probably a little bit of hard of hearing. But he understands that it's the voice of Jacob. Voice of Jacob, but the hands of Esau. So they passed test number 1 with the skins on the back of their hand and the back of his arm and everything. And he said, bring to me and I will eat of the son's game, and I may bless you. And I brought to him, his Abel also brought him wine that he drank. And his father Isaac said to him, please come and kiss me, my son. And so he came close to him, and he smelled the garments, and blessed him, and said, see, the smell of my son is like the smell of the field, which the Lord has blessed. Now may God give you the dew of the heaven, and the fatness of the earth, and the abundance of grain, and the new wine. May people serve you, may nations bow down to you, may you be the master of your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be who curses you, and blessed be those who bless you. And now it came about that as soon as Isaac finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had hardly gone out from the presence of Isaac, his father, that Esau, his brother, came in from hunting. Wow. Let's think about this there real quick. Number 1, the garments. Rebecca knew what she was doing. Rebecca was a smart, and I would say a deceptive lady, because those garments smelled like Esau. If we wear something, if you remember, this is not the age of laundry in your household. You give off a certain smell, a certain odor, and trust me, you can tell that over the course of time if you're not washing clothes on a regular basis. And it smelled like Esau. Rebecca was so on this game of getting the blessing for Jacob. She had everything down to a T. Perfection. What we see here in verse 30 is just about the time that Jacob is leaving, Esau is coming. So really, it's interesting to the fact that God was good to Esau and got the game so quickly, and came back, and we see this transitioning going on here. Excuse me, in verse 31, and they also made savory food and brought it to his father, and said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat the son's game, that you may bless me." And Isaac the father said to him, "Who are you?" And he said, "I am your son Esau." And Isaac trembled violently. It was Isaac's voice. He realized it, and he realized what he had just done. He trembled violently. Now, we don't know if that's out of sadness or anger or whatever, but he continues on. And he said, who was then that brought the hunted game and brought it to me, so I ate of all of it before you came and blessed him? Yes, he shall be blessed. And when Esau heard the words of his father and cried out an exceedingly great bitter cry, and said to his father, "Bless me, even also, O my father." And he said, Your brother came deceitfully and has taken away your blessing. And he said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times, and he took away my birthright. And behold, now he has taken away my blessing." And he said, "You have not reserved a blessing for me?" Question mark. Question. So we see the emotions that are welling up here. We see the deceit of Rebekah and Jacob together following through this plot, and how it's manifesting itself in Esau. Now, those of us that understand the word know that Jacob is going to be known as a big figure, all right? When the Jewish people talk about the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, it's not about Esau. You're not hearing his name mixed into this. It's a big thing that this whole deception is going on. But you have to think about Esau here. The emotions. Obviously he's angry. He's letting out a cry of desperation and anger. 2 times now, his brother has ripped him off. His brother could have given him that bowl of lentils because he was hungry and he was out, but he didn't. He tied something to that. He asked him to give up his extra portion of his inheritance, his birthright. Now, his brother has gone beyond just the trading of this with that, but he has gone to the point of deceiving his father to steal his blessing. Can you blame Esau for being angry? If that happened to you or happened to me, could you blame this Esau guy for being upset? Could you be, like, "Oh, come on, calm down, fella. It's nothing big. It's just the blessing of everything that's good in life, and it's just your extra portion of this vast fortune. Don't be upset about it." Does that ever bother you when people tell you not to get upset about something you're upset about? It does, right? It's like, what do you mean you don't get upset? Then what really happens is you get upset even more. I kind of feel for Esau here. I kind of feel for the fact that this guy has, in his own right, done his own thing, and his father loved him. He knew he was going to get a blessing. He knew that he already had he traded his birthright for a bowl of soup to keep living. And then he finds out that his brother ripped him off. Can you imagine the way you might feel about your brother at this time? Your sister, whoever it might be, fill in the blank. I can imagine that you and I know how I would feel, and I'm going to be honest. I would exactly what he's going to say here is exactly how I would probably feel. Honest truth. You're not happy. You already probably dislike your brother a lot for stealing your birthright. So let's see what he has to say here as he goes down through. And he trembled violently. It was good to end in verse 3-4. Esau heard the words of his father and cried exceedingly great even me also, O my father. And he said, your brother came and deceitfully and taken away your blessing. And he said, is he not rightly named Jacob? For he supplanted me in this day, the times he took away my birthright. Have you not reserved the blessing for me? We'll come back to that here real quick. But Isaac answered and said to Esau, behold, I have made him your master, and all your relatives I have given to him as servants in the grain, with the new wine I have sustained him. Now as for you, what can I do, my son? And Esau said to his father, do you have only one blessing, my father? Bless me even also, O my father. So Esau lifted his voice and wept. See, we talked about this a little bit previously. It was a big deal. You didn't give your word in this culture and back away from it and say, oh, well, it was because it was deception. I'm going to just... No, it was spoken and it was law. It was what it was. And you see the remorse in Isaac about this, right? Where you say, I made him you're going to serve him. Every one of your descendants, he's your master. That's what I blessed him. And Esau is grasping at straws, and you see his anxiety level here raising. And he said, but don't you just have one blessing? Can't you bless me with something? Now listen to the second blessing. This is all that Isaac had that he had left to do. And it's not much. And Isaac, his father answered and said to him, behold, away from the fertility of the earth shall your dwelling be, away from the dew of the heaven from above, and your sword, by your sword you shall live, and your brother you shall serve. But it shall come about when you become restless, that you shall break the yoke from your neck. That's it. You get to go when the land is no good. You get to work hard. You're going to have to live your life by fighting other people's in a violent fashion, taking your life in your own hands every day, and then someday you'll be free. Wow, that's a real great blessing. Now you really understand what's fueling what Esau is feeling here. That's it? You gotta be kidding me. So Esau bore a grudge against Jacob, no doubt. And because of the blessing with which his father blessed him, and Esau said to himself, the days of mourning for my father are near, and then I will kill my brother. You can't really fault the guy for feeling this way. You know, in the heat of the moment, in the emotions of it all. Don't we really say some really hard things sometimes when we're emotional? That's why it's really not good to make life-altering decisions when we're in an emotional state. He is basically saying here, I'm going to kill my brother for ripping me off as soon as dad's dead. As soon as dad is gone, because I know this is going to upset dad. But he's out of here. We're going to cover just a little bit more here real quick, and then we're going to hit a few things in the last couple minutes. And therefore, my son, obey my voice, arise. Oh, no, I'm going to skip that, I'm sorry. Now when these words of the elder son of Esau were reported to Rebekah, she called the younger son Jacob and said to him, behold, your brother Esau is counseling himself concerning you, and consoling himself concerning you, and planning to kill you. You had to think this was coming. I mean, really, if you're Jacob, your brother's the biggest, baddest dude of the two of you, and you're ripping him off for the second time, and you don't think he's going to kill you? This isn't going through your mind at all? Maybe he didn't process it. Maybe he's not that smart. And therefore, my son, obey my voice and rise to Haran to my brother Laban, and stay with him for a few days until your brother's fury subsides. I don't know about you, but if I've been wronged this bad by my brother, a few days is not going to cut it. It's going to take a while for me to feel a little better about him. And until your brother's anger against you subsides and he forgets what you did to him. I kind of laugh when I read this every time. How do you forget something like this? We're called to forgive. And we're called to forget. Well, let's be realistic, folks. How do you forget your brother stabbed you in the back like this twice? That's rough. So I'm kind of laughing at her words because it's kind of silly. But what should I do? Why should I be bereaved of both of you in one day? And Rebecca said to Isaac, I am tired of living because the daughters have had this. If Jacob takes away from the daughters of like these, from the daughters of the land, that what good will be my life to me? All right, a couple things here. She doesn't want to mourn her husband's death and her favorite son's death all in the same day, which is pretty much going to happen. We see that. And then she also says to him that, I don't want you to marry these local girls. Obviously, we're going to find out a little more about that later on. In closing, a couple things here. Once again, we see God perpetuating positive things in the future by broken, feeble, sin-filled human beings. You can't get much more corrupt than a mother encouraging a son to rip off the other sibling. I mean, that's pretty corrupt. That's bad. That's sin-filled. But yet we see the nation of Israel, God using Jacob and his heritage down the road to create a great nation, which our Savior is going to come from, to solve the problem of those sins of the past, the present, and the future. That's a positive thing for us that we talked about a couple weeks ago. We also need to understand that there are going to be times that we are dealing with things, that we are dealing with situations, that our emotions are going to be at hot point levels. And we as believers have been called to deal differently with these issues and situations than the world. The problem is, we are still touched by the curse of sin. And that's not exactly how we feel about these things. If we are going to be the salt and the light, if we are going to be the examples for our companions, our brothers, our sisters, our relatives, our neighbors, who we work with, whatever it might be, we have to do our very best to work through these issues as God would have us do. I'm not telling you to do anything I can't do. I can say we have to try. Okay? Because I'm not telling you that I would act any differently than Esau would have acted here and said the same things that Esau would have said. But we have to do better than that. We have to try. We have to keep our emotions under control and keep the thought of reality before us. One thing out of all of this one last little thought, and it's really nothing, but it's interesting to me to see who and what Rebecca loves. She loves her husband, even though she was willing to deceive him for Jacob, whom she really loves, her son. But she does have a love. I'm not saying she really loves Esau a whole lot. I don't know what's that all about, but she does have love for these individuals. That's pretty amazing. Because even though she loves her husband Isaac, she was willing to deceive him. Folks, our love has to be like God's love. Our love has to be a little more than Rebecca's love and her allegiance to one or another. We have to make sure that our allegiance is to God first. To do the right thing is first. To make sure that our witness, our striving to be and living a holy life is first. Our human wants, needs, and desires have to come secondary. Easy to say, not easy to do. So we've got a lot of thinking. I don't think anybody's going to have a moment in their lives that they're not going to have to put themselves into a situation like this, where the emotions are raw, there's anger there to the point that you might want to, do something that you shouldn't ought to do. But we can't, as believers. We can't let ourselves go down that road. We may harbor these feelings for a while. We may have a struggle learning to forgive. We may have some bitterness in our lives, but we have to continue to strive to work them out. I'd be lying to you if I said to you, hey, I'm perfect with all my relationships. I'm perfect with everything I feel about people. There's nobody that's done me wrong that I haven't forgiven 100%, because I'm lying to you if I say that. I've got people that have done me wrong in ministry. I've got people that have done me wrong in personal relationships. And yes, there are some that I have come to the point that I have forgiven them 100%. And it doesn't bother me anymore. But there are some that I deal with on a daily basis. Sometimes that thought pops in my head. It's going to happen. But am I approaching it with the aspect of continuing to make these feelings get worse? Or am I chastising myself about these things and saying, you know what, that's not the right way to feel about this, no matter if you're right in the situation or not? You got to work with it. We all have to do that. Boy, oh boy, that's a tough one. It is really tough. Really, really tough. But with prayer, reading the Word, and fellowshipping with our brothers and sisters in Christ, we can make ourselves strong enough to at least work at these problems, even if we can't defeat these problems. Thank God for that. Praise God for that. Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the opportunity to be in your house this morning, to understand that we have shortcomings in our own lives, that the curse of sin cuts so deeply into us that we do things that we shouldn't do, and have things done to us that shouldn't be done, and then we have to deal with all these emotions, Lord. We ask and pray today that you will help us to be strong in you. Help our example to be seen as one that is absolutely out of the norm. If we're wrong, then we don't lash out. If we're wrong and we don't try to repay that wrong with another wrong, people are going to see that, Lord, and they're going to see a testimony of somebody trying to do the right thing, trying to strive for a better life, trying to strive to impress upon others the goodness of you through them. We ask and pray, Lord, today that you would just guide and bless and direct us as feeble, broken human beings that are supported by you. We thank you for coming and touching our hearts, bringing us to you and saving us. We thank you for eternal grace, love, and mercy. We ask these things in Jesus' name. Amen. All right.